Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. We are talking all about Tottenham Hotspur today after yesterday's disappointing loss in the North London derby. Things have gone in a bit of a downward spiral for Spurs following the international break. We're going to be talking all about Spurs. We're going to be talking about the issues regarding the club and manager and players and so on and so forth. But before we go any further into diving into this topic, I would like to remind you all to please like the video and also subscribe if you're new. Both of you always and forever be greatly appreciated. But for now, let's go back to talking about Tottenham and the problems that they've faced and are facing in the past, present and future. The new manager bounce has well and truly ended for Spurs, hasn't it? The bubble has well and truly burst, and Spurs have been brought back down to earth in recent weeks, and the North London Derby Day defeat to Arsenal this past weekend has obviously and certainly made that truly apparent there. The game was well and truly over within the opening 45 minutes, wasn't it? As Arsenal well and truly blitzed away Spurs, going 3-0 up by half time and then going on to see out the rest of the game and win 3-1, taking all 3 points and all the bragging rights that go along with a Derby Day victory. Spurs got absolutely smashed. They got absolutely blown away by Arsenal, particularly within a 22-minute period within the first half, in which Arsenal scored all 3 of their goals in. But this now marks the 3rd straight league loss for Spurs and in a row for Nuno Espirito Santo's side, following defeats to both Crystal Palace and Chelsea within recent weeks. The run of bad form is highlighted even more due to obviously Spurs' good start to the season, in which they opened up the new campaign by winning their opening 3 games, all by the single goal to nil. They kept 3 clean sheets in the process, gained 9 points, and were top of the table by the opening international break. But of course, the table doesn't really exist right now because we are so early on in the season. But it was the dream start to life for Nuno Espirito Santo at Tottenham. The dream start to a new campaign that Tottenham could have asked for. But it all has gone downhill from there. As I say, it was a perfect start by Tottenham. A win over Manchester City, the defending Premier League champions. A win in which Spurs were not expected to get anything out of. They played their counter-attacking game to perfection on that day for the majority of it. And that was followed up by victories over both Wolves and Watford. But then, like I say, things took a sour turn. Things went in a bit of a downward spiral following the international break. A thumping by Crystal Palace was then followed by another thumping by Chelsea a week later. And then last night's defeat as well means that they've conceded 9 goals in the last 3 games. And when you're a more defensive unit, when you favour a more defensive style of approach and look for a more counter-attacking style to obviously try and attack and hurt an opposition with, conceding that many goals and only scoring 1 goal in that time as well signals that whatever you're trying certainly isn't working. I certainly believe that one of the issues that is affecting Spurs right now and probably affecting them in a downward spiral has been their transfer policy over this summer. There was a fair bit of shuffling around this past summer, this past transfer window at Spurs within the squad. Nuno saw fit to get rid of a few experienced faces and notorious names that have been around the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for a few years now, with the likes of Moussa Sissoko, Danny Rose, Eric Lamela, Serge Aurier, and even slightly more surprisingly, Toby Alderweireld, all leaving the club this summer. Especially Alderweireld's presence in the back line, I feel like they could do with his experience and his leadership right now. Their replacements mainly come in the form of Brian Gill, Emerson Royal, Christian Romero, all of which are still yet to properly bed into their new club and new league yet. The jury is still out on these players. But there was a fair few big changes that took place at Spurs across this summer, and mainly came down to, I believe, the appointment of course, their new sporting director, Fabio Paratici. He's already made his mark at the club with the new signings that he's made, and he's even supposedly had the biggest say of all in obviously Tottenham's new manager, Nuno Espirito Santo, as his 7th, 8th, 9th, maybe even 10th, 11th, 12th choice of new manager after Spurs went about through everybody under the sun, including Dave from down the road. So he's definitely made his mark, but there have been a lot of changes that have happened at Spurs over the summer, behind the scenes and also in personnel-wise in the squad. And I think the multiple changes that have occurred are obviously going to take their time to take effect and gel into that squad. And, you know, whilst the new acquisitions themselves are relatively young still, they have been thrown into the deep end a little bit by this club, I think. Another issue appears to be the manager. We know that obviously Nuno's style of play is a more defensive approach. We've touched upon this before. We've said that he favours a more defensive style of play as well as a more counter-attacking intent. And it should be nothing new for this Spurs side. Most of them obviously have come through the other side of having Jose Mourinho as their manager recently, who plays a very similar way. But I struggle to watch this Spurs side now. Under Pochettino, they were interesting and sometimes exciting to watch. But here, they're rather dull. They are lackluster. They lack entertainment value. Not only that, but when he was at Wolves, he had players that bought into his philosophy and would work extremely hard, and they would work together as a unit. I don't see that with the Spurs side right now. Maybe it's because it's early days. Maybe it's because it's going to take time for him to kind of get his style of play across to these players, even though they should be used to it, like I say, having played under Jose Mourinho more recently than anyone else. But as I mentioned, the opening day victory over Manchester City was the greatest performance that Tottenham put on this season. It was the great performance, their best performance of the season. They've not managed to replicate anything like that since. Now, you can argue that maybe circumstances played their part and maybe they played into Spurs' favour a little bit on that day. Maybe it was the perfect time to be facing Manchester City and so on. But what about since then? Like I say, they've not managed to replicate any kind of performance like that since then. But maybe something lies underneath these two issues, or maybe something lies in the centre of these two issues. And I'm talking about the issues that centre around one man in particular, and that is the one known as Harry Kane. The man who so much has been spoken of, so much has been talked about, so much has been speculated on these past few weeks and months in regards to his future at the club. He eventually ended up staying at Spurs for at least one more season after a car crash of a transfer saga in which all parties involved messed up at some stage or another throughout the entirety of this story. It was a bizarre kind of story throughout the entirety of the summer. But eventually it seemed that Daniel Levy had won the battle in which he got his wish and that Kane would end up staying. But of course, the proof of whether it turned out to be the right decision or not would always remain to be seen once Harry got back on the pitch, got back playing for Spurs, and we would see if he got back into it, got stuck back in and hit the ground running. But so far it simply hasn't happened yet. He's yet to score so far this season, and he seems extremely unhappy at Spurs. And at times yesterday, he had chances that normally he would bury, normally he would score, normally he does score in a North London derby in particular. But yesterday he missed some very good chances, so maybe he's lacking a bit of confidence in front of goal right now. But overall, we really know that deep down he's still upset about not leaving for Manchester City this summer. And all those things that seem to be on his mind, from the failure of a move, England, everything in between that's happened this past summer, it may be the reasons why his form is declining so much since the beginning of this campaign. Upon reflection, you know, when you look back and you see that see of his tweet in which he stated that the fans were the reason behind his decision to stay at Tottenham this season, his decision seemed to be made out of reluctance. You know, you can read into that tweet as much as you want, but it seemed to be out of reluctance to try and get the fans back on side after what had been a crazy saga. after no move actually did end up materialising to Manchester City. And there are seemingly hints that he's still got a move away on his mind. He's still got an eye out for a move away from Spurs at some point in the near future, because obviously the part where he says, I will stay at Spurs for this season, or whatever it may be. It just simply won't happen until the end of the season at the very least. But the ironic thing is, Spurs' best performance came without him being in the side. Since he's been in, his form has been poor, his attacking stats haven't been to the usual reading that we come to expect from Kane. His performances may also have been the cause of the squad being demoralised. He's meant to be one of the main leaders of the team, he's meant to be the role model, the guy you look up to, and it simply looks like he's phoning it in. Like, it looks like he's not all there. There's something not quite right with Kane at this club, and how is anyone supposed to take him or the club seriously when the main guy appears to be just phoning it in like this? And besides, the longer his bad performances continue, it's very likely that transfer interest sort of may drop in him a little bit, may get his price tag may get a bit slashed, or the bids may get a bit slashed. He's certainly not putting himself in the spotlight for a move away from the club, let's put it that way. There's just something especially not right with Harry Kane right now. And like I say, the ironic thing is, against Manchester City, Kane wasn't in the squad, but that was Spurs' best performance. Just saying. I honestly think that even at this early stage within his Tottenham career, Nuno Espirito Santo needs to change his philosophy to be a bit more attacking. It was okay to be a bit more defensive at Wolves, where of course you're more of the underdog, that's fine. But when you make the move up to Spurs, with all due respect, many fans are going to see Tottenham as a bit of a step up from Wolves. And, you know, with Tottenham being in that 5th, 6th bracket that many people put them in, of course that is a level up from Wolves at least. But the longer the season goes on, and the more you talk about Spurs and the more you see the problems that are being outlined here, the more of a struggle it may seem for them to achieve that goal this season. A more attacking approach will help the fullbacks, who seem to be a more attacking threat than they are at being defensive-minded fullbacks. It will also help the likes of Giovanni Lo Celso, Heung-min Son, and of course Dele Alli, who aren't really used to being more defensive players. They will obviously benefit from a more attacking approach as well. And of course, when you look at them 3 players in particular, with the exception of maybe Son, you know, neither of them have really hit any sort of real good form in recent times. So maybe they can rediscover their good form, them kind of players, them more attacking players at least. And of course, if you can get through to Harry Kane and convince him to up his game and be back to the Harry Kane that we're used to seeing week in, week out, then of course it will have a positive effect on Kane, and maybe he will rediscover his goal-scoring touch and his good form again. Otherwise, I can only see it being another season where it's inconsistent to mediocre, and there's some rather dull football to boot. But we wait and see. But of course, these are just the thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, whatever you want to call it, of this guy. I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of anything to do with this Tottenham Hotspur side, from the manager to the players to the games that they've played this season, to the performances, to the results, to the transfer activity this past summer, anything and everything in between? I'd love to know your thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions on this Spurs side, on anything to do with this topic down below in the comment section, because I'm sure it'll all make for interesting reading. Otherwise, hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new or want to see more content like this. Both things are always and forever be greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch, this has been another Fletch Talks video, and I will see you all again soon in another video.